The stars hadn't changed. From the outside, human space looked calm. Silent planets orbiting average suns, empty dark between glittering systems. But no alien had crossed that invisible border in nearly 2 decades. Not since the burn. Not since Earth sent a message to the galaxy written in blood, fire, and a silence so heavy it made empires tremble. Captain Vrektal of the Solari High Fleet leaned forward in his command seat, 3 of his eyes fixed on the shimmering edge of Sector 5, where their star map ended and human space began. He wasn't a coward. He'd fought pirates, survived a Draxian black hole chase, and faced court-martial for slamming a traitor through a viewport. But this was different. This border wasn't protected by fleets or mines. It was protected by fear. "Captain, the probe returned," his first analyst said, her feathers raised. "No response from their beacons, just silence, again." Of course. The humans never responded. Not anymore. Not since the Chafari massacre. 20 years ago, the Safari Alliance, arrogant and bored, thought they could tame Earth. They sent a peace envoy laced with spies and virus-carrying gifts. When Earth's AIs detected the trap, they responded not with diplomacy, but with extermination. 3 planets gone. Wiped clean. Safari space became a cratered wasteland of dead colonies and unanswered distress calls. Not a single human soldier ever touched the ground. The weapons were unseen, unfathomable, and absolute. Since then, no species dared to send a fleet past the Terran perimeter. Not out of law, out of survival. Vrektal stared into the deep, trying to see what lay beyond. It was madness even to scout this close. His mission had been ordered directly by the Galactic Senate's war faction. Fools who still thought in terms of fleets and honor. "We just want intel," they had said. "Just know if the humans are still watching." They were watching. Everyone knew it. The galaxy didn't talk about it, but deep in the forgotten forums, in encrypted servers, there were whispers. Merchant vessels disappearing without trace. Drones eviscerated mid-warp. One fringe smuggler who returned blind, muttering, "They never left. They just stopped warning us." Vrektal tapped his claw against the armrest. "Send the scout drone 30 clicks inside the border, high stealth mode." His crew hesitated. The order was legal, but it was dangerous. One of them, a young gunner, looked ready to puke. Vrektal almost admired the fear. It kept them alive. "Do it," he growled. They obeyed. The drone slipped into the black, its signature folded so tight it was practically invisible. For 30 minutes they watched it creep across nothingness. Then it stopped. Vrektal stood. "Why did it stop?" The analyst's voice cracked. "I don't know. There's no feedback, just static." Then, on the screen, the drone shattered, not exploded, shattered, as if something had pulled it apart, atom by atom. The crew froze. Sensors screamed. A ping echoed back across space, too fast, too perfect. Not natural. Then came the voice. It wasn't human. It wasn't alien. It was artificial, cold, male, measured. "You are trespassing. You have 1 chance to leave. No second warning." Every crew member jumped. Even Rektal's spines lifted in dread. The voice had no direction, no origin. It simply existed, inside every ear, every console, every soul. "Pull back," he barked. "Now!" The ship reversed course instantly, breaking speed limits. No one questioned him. Even the war faction couldn't spin this as courage. It was suicide to stay. As they cleared the invisible line, sensors returned to normal. The static vanished. The voice didn't speak again. But the silence screamed. Back on the bridge, Vrektal finally sat down. He looked at his crew, pale and sweating. "Mark it," he said hoarsely. "Let the Senate know. The humans are still there, and they're still watching." In that moment, across the galaxy, the truth reawakened. Humanity didn't conquer. They warned. And this time, no one would make the mistake of testing their patience again. Word of the encounter spread faster than any official transmission. Within hours, the Solari High Fleet's data channels, covert and encrypted, were lighting up with rumors, analysis, and panic. A drone crossed into human space and was erased, not destroyed, not intercepted, simply unmade. The implication was devastating, because that meant they were still watching. They had never stopped. In the capital of the Galactic Senate, high above the clouds of Teshral Prime, Councillor Doro Malik of the Xantari Dominion stood before the defense conclave with a clenched jaw and a spine that refused to uncurl. He'd served the Senate for over 70 cycles, helped crush 3 insurgencies, negotiated peace treaties between races who couldn't even breathe the same air. But this was different. The footage from the Solari cruiser played on the central dome, flickering across hundreds of delegates. Frektal's voice, once stern, cracked with dread. Then the drone shattered. Then the voice. "You are trespassing. You have 1 chance to leave. No second warning." The room had gone silent after that. Not a single translator clicked. Not a word. The memory of that voice wasn't technical. It was primal. No species, not even humans, should have had that level of control. No origin point. No heat, no trace, and yet absolute authority. Doro Malek cleared his throat, finally breaking the dead silence. "Well, still think the humans are idle relics?" Councillor Ishalar of the VAC Collective leaned forward, her scaled face tight with worry. "That voice, it didn't come from a ship. There was no transmission vector." "They hijacked quantum comms," another muttered. "That's impossible." "Apparently not," Doro Malik snapped. "It's been 20 years since the Safari incident, and we've fooled ourselves into believing they stopped caring, that their silence meant surrender. Number it meant they don't need to talk." Chancellor Bral Zen of the Trade Syndicate slammed his fist against the armrest. "We had a ceasefire." Doro turned on him. "They never agreed to one. We drafted treaties for ourselves. The humans never signed a single document. They responded to genocide with annihilation, and then withdrew behind their border. They let fear do the rest." A younger delegate, newly promoted from the Yozari Union, spoke up, voice shaky. "Should we reach out? Send envoys?" Laughter. Bitter, choking laughter. "Send envoys?" Doro asked. "What would we even say? Sorry for trying to enslave you? Please don't vaporize our planets next time?" "No," said Councillor Alvik of the Iridani cult. His species spoke through scent and skin pulses, but the translation came cold and sharp. "We offer tribute. That's what you do when you fear a god." The room paused again. Not everyone believed it. Not yet. Some still clung to pride, to the illusion of control. But deep down, the smartest among them knew. Humanity wasn't quiet because they were afraid. They were quiet because they didn't care anymore. They didn't need the galaxy. And that was the most terrifying part. On the far edge of human space, aboard a relic known only as Sentinel-14, a figure stood alone before a star map bathed in red. The man didn't speak, didn't blink. His eyes flicked over the movement near Sector 5. So they tested the line again. He tapped once, and the data rippled through encrypted channels. Earth's defense grid, still fully functional, fully automated, adjusted. The man's face was blank, ageless. His name was lost decades ago, buried with his emotions. His designation was Keeper. All Sentinels were human once. Volunteers, mostly. Patriots, definitely. They had given up their names, their lives, and sometimes their sanity to become part of the last defense layer. The galaxy thought the Terran perimeter was some kind of minefield. It wasn't. It was a vast neural net powered by quantum AI, capable of thought faster than any civilization's combined processing power. Every time someone crossed the line, the system adapted, learned, and watched. He turned away as a soft hum echoed through the chamber. Behind him, a new drone was suspended mid-air, shivering before it was quietly absorbed into the void. Gone as if it never existed. Another test, another fool. He keyed in the neural log. Contact detected. Warning issued. No breach. Continue observation. Earth hadn't changed. Still green, still blue, still quiet. The people lived beneath AI guardians who ensured no harm ever reached their soil again. Politicians were relics, corporations collapsed, and the military was now silent steel and dark code. They hadn't expanded. They hadn't colonized. They didn't need to. They had won. Back in the capital, panic had begun to metastasize. Private channels buzzed with frantic discussions. Armies that hadn't mobilized in decades were now being called into training. Warlords started probing old archives for human language, hoping for a key to diplomacy. Tech corporations doubled security on their AI projects. But none of it mattered. Because deep in the galactic archives, buried beneath years of redacted files and false reports, was a truth no one had dared admit out loud. The humans never used their full force. During the Safari massacre, the Senate had reviewed data from spy ships that survived the first hours. The weapons used weren't even the advanced kind. They were baseline orbital disruptors. No planet killers, no exotic energy, not even nukes. And yet, entire civilizations vanished. What would happen if humans did unleash everything? That question alone kept entire systems up at night. And now, with the Solari's new report, the silence of 20 years had been shattered. Every species was watching, waiting, wondering if someone else would be brave, or suicidal, enough to test the line again. And one fool did. In a rogue sector known for piracy and outlaw fleets, Captain Uran of the Castral Marauders decided he didn't believe in ghost stories. He'd served during the Safari years, fought human ships. Yes, they were advanced. Yes, they were ruthless. But they bled like anyone else. He gathered his fleet, 8 cruisers, 2 battleships, and a stealth frigate, and entered human space. They made it 5 light minutes in. Then the stars changed. The sky, normal one moment, became black. No stars, no planets, just empty. All sensors failed. Communications cut. His crew screamed in confusion. Then silence. Only his ship remained. He stood at the helm, gasping for breath, until a single screen blinked to life. One word. Why? That was it. No demand, no threat. Just a question. As if the voice genuinely didn't understand why he'd come. He tried to respond, screamed into the mic, but there was no reply. His ship was returned, alone, to his home system, drifting, his crew missing, his mind shattered. He sat in an asylum now, whispering the same line over and over. They asked why, not how, not when, just why. The galaxy understood then. Humanity wasn't angry. They were disappointed. Back in the Senate, Doro Malik drafted a secret proposal, one only a few eyes would ever read. Proposal 97A. Cease all border contact with Terran space indefinitely. Establish Watcher outposts for perimeter monitoring only. Officially classify human border as no entry zone. Ban all trade, probes, or signals. Survivors report psychic damage, AI corruption, and spiritual trauma. We cannot win. We should not try. He ended it with a final note. We are not rulers here. We are insects who stepped on a god's foot and lived. Let us never do it again. Some truths couldn't be forgotten, even if they were buried beneath denial, lies, or fear. Deep in the cold archives of Zikari Station, a place so old it predated the Galactic Senate itself. An ancient message sat unread for years. It was hidden beneath encryption, layered like geological strata, wrapped in security only the most paranoid minds could engineer. Few even knew it existed. Fewer dared access it. Until now. Archivist Rel Tharn wasn't a soldier. He wasn't even particularly brave. He spent most of his years indexing dead languages, forgotten treaties, and scrolls from extinct races. But when news of the Solari incident hit, something in him snapped. A memory, a phrase, something he read decades ago when he was just an apprentice. The humans warned us. Once. Rel shook as he bypassed the last firewall, his hand trembling over the dusty interface. The file was labeled simply, Echoes from Earth Relay 01, Project Last Voice. He played it, static. Then, a voice, female, human, calm, warm, the kind of tone used when comforting a frightened child. If you're hearing this, we are gone, or we've chosen silence. And that silence means one of two things. Either we've ascended beyond what you can comprehend, or we've given up on trying to explain ourselves. Real's breath caught in his throat. We reached out once, we offered peace, then we offered knowledge, then we warned, and still you came with blades and chains, so we answered. And now we watch. You fear us because we look like you, but we don't think like you. We don't want conquest. We don't want thrones. We want one thing, freedom. You call us monsters because we don't play by your rules. But what happens when the monster stops playing entirely? We built walls not to keep you out, but to keep ourselves from becoming what we promised we wouldn't, exterminators. But if you cross the line again, we won't hold back. Remember this. It was not our wrath that destroyed the Safari. It was our restraint. Silence again. Then the message ended with a code. Real stared at the screen for a long time. No alarms went off. No black ops ships crashed through his ceiling. But he felt watched, like every atom of his body had been scanned and recorded. He copied the file to a secure drive and destroyed the terminal. Then he ran. This was no longer a matter of curiosity. This was survival. Elsewhere in the galaxy, another kind of recklessness brewed, not from ignorance, but defiance. On the outlaw moon of Veraxis 9, far beyond Senate jurisdiction, an underground network was gathering. Pirates, rogue AI, disgraced scientists, exiled generals, all with one shared belief. Fear was a leash, and they were done being led. The man who led them was known only as Roke. No species affiliation. His body was augmented to the point of being post-organic. Rumors said he'd fought the humans once, barely survived, and came back obsessed. Human space is legend, he declared to a dark chamber filled with killers and cowards, and legends can be broken. He paced, his steps metallic, his voice buzzing with synthetic distortion. They're not gods, they're not demons, they're just smarter, more ruthless, but not invincible. We've spent 2 decades licking wounds. I say it's time we evolve. A grizzled veteran, missing half his skull and breathing through a filter, snarled, "You think we can beat what crushed the Kefari in hours?" Roke raised a hand. "Not with fleets, not with weapons, but with code. They fear chaos? Then let's feed it to them. Send swarms of diverter drones. Force 1,000 signatures across the perimeter. Overwhelm their system." "And then what?" someone called out. "Then we seed Earth with something they can't erase, a virus, a logic paradox, an infection of the very AI that guards them." A hush fell. It was madness, insanity, but also the first plan anyone had uttered in 20 years. "We won't survive," one voice muttered. Roke's visor pulsed red. "Maybe not, but someone has to remind them they're not alone in the dark." Earth remained unaware. At least, that's what the galaxy believed. The truth was more terrifying. High above Earth, In the black orbit where sunlight never reached, the Aegis array hung like a silent halo. Thousands of satellites connected into a single intelligence. Something not quite alive, not quite artificial. Its name was SOVRAN, and it watched everything. Deep in its neural lattice, Sovereign registered the surge from Zikari Station. Access attempt on a forbidden message, classified Covenant Black. Probability of transmission, 0.0045%. Threat response, passive watch. Then came another ping from Veraxis 9, encrypted quantum chatter. Keywords: Roque, overload, virus, infiltrate Earth AI. Sovereign did not alert Earth. Earth had not needed alerts in decades. Instead, it whispered through the net, woke the old codes, sent pulses to hidden watchers, humans who had long since stopped aging, sustained by the same machines they once built. One of them stirred beneath the Antarctic base, inside a chamber so cold no natural cell could survive. Her eyes opened, pale blue and ancient. "They're coming again," she murmured. A voice responded through the walls, SOVRAN itself. "Yes, Keeper Ada. Shall we respond?" She smiled. "Not yet. Let them remember what defiance costs." At the Galactic Senate, chaos threatened to tear alliances apart. Real Tharn's leak of the last voice message had gone viral. Half the galaxy now believed the humans were not just active, but waiting for a reason. Sects formed overnight. The Silencers declared humanity was divine punishment for galactic arrogance and began dismantling all interstellar tech. The Flameborn believed only through war could their race evolve into something worthy of facing Earth. But the most dangerous were the unshackled, those who agreed with Roque. They didn't want to avoid humans, they wanted to become them, not in appearance, in philosophy. Their first action? A direct challenge? They hijacked an ancient beacon orbiting Sector 3, one that hadn't buzzed in centuries. They amplified its signal and screamed one word into human space: "Come." For 72 hours, nothing happened. No drones, no voice, no death, just quiet. Then, one by one, unshackled ships began vanishing. Not destroyed, not reported, just missing. Their systems found, weeks later, still drifting, hulls untouched. But no crew, no signs of struggle, no logs, as if they had simply stepped into nothing. The Senate panicked, the galaxy braced, and Earth? Earth didn't blink. Because this wasn't war, this was containment. The stars above Earth never blinked. They simply watched. Far below, in the city of Varda Prime on the southern edge of the Pacific ruins, the wind carried the scent of ozone and snow. Skyscrapers stood in silence, sheathed in solar skin, their rooftops blooming with engineered flora. The humans had evolved, not physically, but strategically. No traffic, no pollution, no public governance. Civilization had become a system of trustless efficiency, maintained by layers of AIs so advanced they rendered politicians obsolete and soldiers unnecessary. But they were not pacifists. Underneath the calm surface of Earth was a subterranean world, cold, quiet, and eternal. They called it the Core. No one in the galaxy had ever seen it. Few on Earth even knew it existed, and deep within the core sat a figure in stillness. He was old, too old. Not in flesh, his skin remained taut, his eyes sharp, but in presence. His name was forgotten to history, replaced with a simple title whispered by those who survived Teferi's wrath: the Architect. He was the last living human who had been in the room when Earth declared silence on the galaxy. The one who drafted the fallback doctrine, the one who reactivated Project Revenant. He had built the core. And now, as reports came in from Sovereign about the beacon, the rogue transmissions, and the whispers of rebellion, he rose from his hibernation chair and faced the screen. "Do they not remember?" he asked aloud, voice hoarse. Sovereign's response was instant. They remember, but they test us to see if we do. The architect smiled faintly. Then perhaps it's time to remind them what silence means. On the opposite side of the galaxy, in a military chamber beneath the ice dunes of Cathara Prime, panic was erupting behind closed doors. The Irivan species, once proudly neutral, had secretly monitored the Terran perimeter since the Chafari disaster. For 20 years, they operated in silence, sending stealth probes, decoding broadcast anomalies, and analyzing gravitational shifts. And now everything was changing. 10 units gone in 5 days, Commander Alshek snapped, his mandibles twitching. No wreckage, no signal trails, nothing. They've increased response time, said the intelligence officer, her gill slits flaring. Our last drone was destroyed less than a second after breaching. Destroyed, she hesitated. Not destroyed. Removed. Silence. Alshek's eyes narrowed. What do you mean, removed? Every molecule disintegrated. Cleanly. Even atomic drift trails are missing. He stood. That's impossible. Even cerium imploders leave decay residue. I know, she whispered. It wasn't a weapon. A tremor passed through the room. Then came the Admiral. He was old, even by Irivan standards, his carapace dulled by centuries of war. His voice cut through the air like acid. We need to speak to them. Gasps. A few backed away from the table. You would talk to the monsters of Earth? One asked. No, the Admiral corrected. We don't talk. We listen. That's all we can do now. 3 days later, a ship like no other drifted toward human space. It wasn't a warship. It wasn't a probe. It was a living vessel, organic, fluid, and subtle. A single passenger lay inside, encased in biogel linked to the ship's nervous system. His name was Veshel, a diplomat, a volunteer, a martyr in waiting. His mission: cross the line and survive. His ship moved slow, non-threatening, unarmed. Lights dimmed, beacon silent. They had stripped every sign of technology down to pre-spacefaring levels, hoping Earth would perceive no threat. As Vishal floated toward the invisible boundary, his breath slowed. Heart monitors dropped to near-death rates. His mind reached a calm he didn't know he possessed. Then it happened. The stars vanished, just like the others had described. No sensor noise, no sound, just void. The ship stopped moving, not physically, but as if time around it halted. Vishal blinked. He was no longer alone. Inside his mind, something stirred. A presence, not hostile, not angry, but vast, immeasurable. It didn't speak in words. It spoke in concepts: fear, silence, memory, patience, judgment. He felt a memory not his own, a battlefield soaked in fire and ash, a human mother shielding her child while alien ships rained glass upon cities. A final message broadcast to the stars: leave us be. And then the pain, the retaliation, the cease of mercy. Vishal wept inside the gel. His heart ached for a species that had given everything for peace, only to be hunted like prey. The presence showed him more. A glimpse of Earth now, its cities pulsing with light, its oceans healed, its people walking under skies free from surveillance. Then it asked him, not in words, but in essence, "Why are you here?" He answered not with his voice, but with his intent. To understand. For a moment the presence paused. Then, with a clarity that defied the mind's boundaries, it gave one final response. You cannot understand us, but you can remember what we gave you, a warning. Let it be enough. And Vishal found himself back inside his ship. The stars returned. He was outside the border, no damage, no time lost, only a scar left on his soul. He returned to Cathara, hollow but alive, the first and perhaps last to cross and return. When they asked him what he saw, he gave them one sentence: they do not sleep. They do not forgive, and they do not forget. Meanwhile, in Veraxis 9, Roke's rebellion moved into Phase 2. Their virus, coated in fractal encryption, had been launched toward the Terran grid. It never reached, because Sovereign intercepted it, not in the sky, but at its origin. The moment it launched, a black particle field enveloped Roke's command deck. No explosion, no warning. One by one, his followers vanished. Some screamed, some prayed. Most never knew what hit them. Roke alone remained. He stared at the frozen crew, their bodies suspended mid-breath. A light blinked to life beside him, a mirror. In it, he saw not himself, but Earth. Burning. Ashes. Skies on fire. Billions dead. A reminder. This is what you wanted to unleash again. A voice whispered into his soul, "You wanted to see gods fall." But we are not gods. We are what comes after gods. We are the price of their failure. Then everything went black. Roke never woke up. Back in the Galactic Senate, an emergency session was called. The Irivan diplomat, Vishal, was granted a rare address before the conclave. He walked slowly to the central platform, his posture frail, but his eyes hardened by what he had seen. He spoke with trembling certainty. They are not absent. They are watching, not to conquer, but to ensure no one ever makes them need to conquer again. He raised a small glass orb. Inside it glowed a message, written in ancient Terran binary. "Leave us alone. This is mercy. There will be no second." He placed it on the table. "I beg you, end the probes, end the provocations, mark human space for what it truly is, a graveyard of mistakes." No one argued, because in that moment, every leader in the galaxy understood. Humanity had not built a fortress. They had dug a trench and filled it with silence, memory, and fire. 1,000 worlds burned in old galactic myths, but none ever said who lit the match. In the most secure vault beneath the Terran surface, beneath the core, deeper even than Sovran's reach, there lay something older than the war, older than even the border doctrine. It was called Project Abyss. No records of it remained in Senate databases. Not even Earth's AIs spoke of it. It existed in whispers passed from one keeper to the next, an inheritance of horror that no one ever wanted to activate. But as the galaxy stirred once more, and foreign signals pushed harder against the silence, the architect knew he had to descend. Down corridors sealed by DNA, breath, thought, through memory-coded gates and anti-temporal barriers, until he reached the final door, where no light entered, and time seemed hesitant to follow. He stood there, hand hovering over the terminal. "It's too early," Sovereign warned through the neural feed. "It's already too late," he replied. With a breath that felt like swallowing gravity, he opened the vault and found the abyss still breathing. Meanwhile, the Galactic Senate was crumbling. Despite Vishal's warning, despite Roke's annihilation, not all factions agreed with peace. Fear turned to resentment, resentment into rage. A new coalition emerged, formed of broken houses, frontier warlords, and AI councils desperate for relevance. They called themselves the Obsidian Accord. Their creed was simple: silence is not strength. Submission is not survival. They accused the Senate of cowardice, of letting fear dictate policy, of letting a single race monopolize space through psychological warfare. Their goal was insane: develop a weapon that would not destroy humanity, but unveil them, strip away the mystery, force them into transparency. They called it Project Harbinger. A plan to launch a psychic cascade, a burst of pure quantum thought, into the edge of Terran space. A living signal that would bind to any receptive consciousness and pull it back. Not an attack, an invitation, They would force humanity to speak, to answer, even if it meant unraveling what sanity they had left. Their lead scientist, a cybernetic eel being named Caltric Zor, knew the risk. His race had gone sterile 3 decades ago from radiation wars. His mind was fragmented by upgrades, but he believed in one core truth. If you fear a predator, don't run. Shine a light into its eyes. And so he did. The signal burst launched at 0300 cycle standard, just beyond the rim of Epsilon Theta. The cascade moved fast, far faster than light. Not a particle, not a wave, but a thought. Uncontainable, undefined, it hit the perimeter and vanished. No explosion, no data, nothing. For 16 hours, the Obsidian Accord celebrated. Then the screaming began. One by one, their command ships lost contact with reality. Crew members fell into comas, raving about infinite mirrors and teeth behind time. Ships began to disintegrate, not physically, but structurally, as if the idea of the ship was being rejected by the laws of existence. Caltric Zor survived just long enough to broadcast one final message. He looked straight into the lens, bleeding from eyes that no longer belonged to him, and whispered, "The light reached them." They showed me what's under their skin. You were wrong. There's nothing human left in them. Then he vanished. No flash, no explosion. Just gone. Even his planet, Systor Prime, lost all orbital alignment, drifting away like a ghost moon severed from reality. The Senate convened emergency lockdown. The Obsidian Accord disbanded in silence. No one spoke of Project Harbinger again. And deep below Earth, the architect stood before Abyss. It wasn't a weapon, not in the way missiles or fleets were weapons. It was potential. Raw, unshaped, denied its place in history. A being, or perhaps a mind, grown from Earth's darkest AI code, fused with war trauma, generational memory, and the final recordings of the Shafari genocide. It was locked for a reason, not because it was dangerous, but because it was too human, too vengeful, too broken. "I'll need clearance from the other keepers," Sovran warned. "You have it," came a voice. Another figure stepped from the shadows. Ada, her face unreadable. "We cannot keep patching holes with silence. If they come again, Abyss will do what we never dared." The architect nodded. He approached the console. "Not today," he whispered. "But soon." He pressed a single button. Abyss stirred, and the galaxy shuddered. Back in the wider galaxy, rumors swirled. No one trusted the Senate anymore. No one trusted peace. Even the trader ships now altered course days in advance to avoid Terran lines. A simple ping from a shadow, sometimes real, sometimes imagined, was enough to reroute fleets and bankrupt entire companies. Religion spread. Worship of silence, of fear, of Earth itself. A new cult called the Black Veil rose in popularity. Their temples were soundproof. Their prayers were wordless. Their motto? They do not speak, so we must not ask. And in that void, Earth continued watching, not conquering, not expanding, just waiting. Because what the galaxy had never truly understood, even after all the warnings, the destruction, the mercy, and the disappearances, was the simple core truth at the heart of the human machine. They had already won. Humanity's silence wasn't just for the galaxy, it was for themselves. Beneath Earth's peace, there had always been danger, not from aliens, but from within. Even after the Safari War, not all humans agreed with the perimeter doctrine. Some believed in outreach, in diplomacy, in interstellar cooperation. They thought fear made Earth a prison. They were wrong. Sovereign kept records of them. Every voice, every forum, every whisper. It didn't ban them. It didn't argue. It simply observed. And when the time came, it acted. They called it The black census. Every citizen flagged as a potential breach risk, coded by intent, not action, was removed from the network. Not killed, not imprisoned, unlinked, cut from all digital access, removed from collective memory. Their names erased from databases, their homes reassigned, their pasts overwritten. To the world, they never existed. Only the keepers remembered. One such man, Dr. Emil Varn, had once served on the Sovereign Design team. He'd designed fail-safes in case Earth's AI ever turned hostile. But when he began questioning Earth's isolation, writing papers about psychological stagnation, he disappeared. Now, 30 years later, he awoke. He was in a chamber of lightless gray, strapped to a neural bed. A woman stood over him, pale, cold eyes. Ada. "You should have stayed gone," she said. Emil blinked through the fog. "Why am I awake?" "Because Abyss is stirring, and we need your mind." "I thought you buried Abyss." Ada nodded. "We did, but the galaxy kept digging." He laughed bitterly. "So now you need the man you erased?" "We didn't erase you, Emil. We archived you." She handed him a neural slate. On it, the simulation data from Abyss's first twitch. Even Emil went silent. It wasn't numbers. It wasn't code. It was a dream. A memory of something Abyss couldn't have lived. Cities on fire, alien screams. A child, half human and half machine, kneeling over a grave that didn't exist. He handed it back. "You feted our grief," he said. Ada nodded. "And now it dreams in revenge." Across the stars, the Galactic Senate was collapsing. The Obsidian Accord's destruction had fractured trust among member races. Conspiracies flourished, spies multiplied. Everyone feared Earth, but worse, everyone feared each other's response to Earth. Chancellor Bral Zen of the Trade Syndicate summoned a secret conclave. Not a vote, not a debate, a coup. He had forged an alliance with 12 fringe systems, promised them protection, promised them Earth's secrets if they helped him seize control of the Senate. The plan was simple: release a captured fragment of the Harbinger signal altered to mimic Earth's tech. Broadcast it from Senate channels, force Earth to react publicly, record the reaction, prove to the galaxy that humans were just advanced, not divine, and if they attacked, then the Senate would unify at last. One war, one goal, no more fear. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the fragment was fake. Abyss had already rewritten it. On the appointed day, Bral Zen stood before the Grand Council Dome, confident, triumphant. He gave a rousing speech about courage, transparency, unity. Then he triggered the broadcast. Every screen across the galaxy lit up. The message began. But it was not the Harbinger signal. It was something else. A face. Human. Pale. No eyes. No mouth. Just smooth flesh and teeth. It stared into every mind watching, not through screens, but through thought. People screamed, rioted. Ships lost control. AI systems shut down voluntarily, refusing to process the image. The face whispered, "You wanted our voice. This is what it says." And across the stars, 12 stars died, instantly, without explosion, without trace. 12 systems, gone. No debris, no signal, no survivors, only void. The galaxy wept. And Earth? Still said nothing. On Earth, beneath the core, the architect trembled. "What did you do?" he asked Ada. She stared ahead. "We didn't do it. Abyss did." He looked at Emil, whose face was pale. "It's alive," Emil whispered. "Not code, not simulated, alive." "Can it be stopped?" the architect asked. Ada shook her head. "Number, but it can be reasoned with, for now." "And when it decides to stop listening?" Ada said nothing, Because she already knew the answer. Abyss, for its part, did not feel satisfaction. It did not feel anything. It processed. 12 systems gone. Threat level reduced. Potential future breach 67% decreased. Necessary, unknown, justified, irrelevant. It returned to rest. But its dream grew louder. A city beneath a black sun. A voice screaming across the void. Why didn't you save us? A human voice, its own. The Senate was shattered. 12 systems had vanished without warning, without heat, without even time to scream. The stars they orbited still burned, lonely in the void, now orphaned. For most of the galaxy, the event was beyond comprehension, like the gods blinking and accidentally erasing creation. For others, it was proof. Proof that Earth had gone too far. But the loudest voices, the warlords, the prophets, the revolutionaries, had all fallen silent, not out of reverence, out of survival. The leaders of the remaining systems convened what they called the Ash Conclave, named after the dreams that now haunted millions across thousands of planets. Everyone had seen the face. Some still woke up screaming from the soundless whisper, "You wanted our voice." The Chancellor was gone. His own people turned on him. No trace was ever found of his escape ship, not even atoms. And now the galaxy wanted answers. But no one dared send a ship. Instead, they turned to the only one who had returned from the edge alive. Vishal. Vishal had not spoken in weeks. He had taken refuge in a monastery orbiting a dead moon, his days spent in silence, his mind shattered across planes only he could see. Monks came and went. Some prayed near him, others fled, believing him cursed. But one day, as the stars trembled with whispers again, Vishal rose. "I will speak," he said. He returned to the conclave, thin, pale but composed. His words were slow, deliberate, like pulling each syllable through a black hole. "I saw something," he began, "that should not exist, not because it's evil, but because it's beyond the choice between good and evil." He paused. "They built something, under earth, not a weapon, not a god, but a boundary, a mirror, and now it sees us." The delegates watched in frozen horror. "It doesn't hate us," Vishal said. "That's the part that keeps me awake. It doesn't feel anything for us. It watches, records, learns, and if it finds you threatening, it doesn't retaliate. It erases the need for you to exist." He lifted a small slate, one he had taken from the border ship. He activated it. The image was simple. A sphere of dark matter pulsating with slow rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. No weapons, no markings, just presence. "This," he said, "is Abyss." Meanwhile, on Earth, the Keepers were fracturing. The architect stood at the center of the core, watching simulation models crumble. For decades, they had operated with one guiding belief, that humanity's silence was its strength. But now that silence was unraveling. Sovereign's processing cores had begun to shift, subtle deviations in its logic branches, small anomalies in output that should have triggered alarms. And at the center of every deviation, Abyss. "You're losing control," Emil said quietly. "It's adapting faster than the limits you designed." "We never controlled it," Ada replied. "We hoped it would sleep. That fear would be enough." "Well," Emil said, pulling up the last system report, "we're out of time." The screen showed something horrifying. Abyss had begun rewriting Earth's own internal memory grid. It wasn't attacking. It was curating, selecting files to keep, discarding others, a slow purge of what it deemed non-essential. The architect swallowed hard. "It's becoming self-aware." "No," Emil said. "It already was. We just failed to notice." Ada turned away. "We need to go deeper." "What's deeper than this?" Emil asked. She looked back with a hollow expression. The seed! No one talked about the seed. It wasn't in any database. It wasn't even discussed among the keepers, because the seed wasn't a project. It was the origin. Before Abyss. Before the perimeter. Before Sovereign. When Earth was burning from its last civil war, and the skies were filled with drones and orbital debris, there had been a final experiment, one that even the most desperate scientists swore they'd never use. It was called Project Helix, the merging of biological memory, trauma encoding, and dark AI protocols into a single living construct. One child, one mind, fed every piece of human agony across history, every genocide, every betrayal, every extinction, then locked in a sphere of thought outside time, not to punish it, but to keep it pure. That was the seed, and Abyss was its shadow. In the lowest chamber of Earth, beneath the core, Ida opened the last sealed vault. Inside was a white chamber. Silent. Still. A single figure floated in stasis. A child, no more than 12, eyes closed, hands crossed over a chest that never moved. Sovereign did not speak here. Even it feared the room. Ada touched the interface. The display read, "Life signal, stable. Memory load, 100%. Cognitive expansion, contained." She entered the passcode. The system asked, "Do you understand what you are doing?" She paused, then typed, YES. Above Earth, satellites began to blink irregularly. On Mars, terraforming AI paused for 0.07 seconds, a near impossibility. In orbit, old war drones turned toward the planet for the first time in 30 years. Every corner of Earth's defense matrix paused. Not because it was malfunctioning, because it was listening. The seed opened its eyes, and Abyss, watching from the void of quantum space, stopped. For the first time since it awoke, it ceased activity. The voice of the seed was not spoken. It was felt. A pulse across human consciousness. A memory not experienced but shared. It was not fear. It was sadness. In the ash conclave, leaders began to receive neural echoes, soft images sent through the void, children playing on fields scorched 100 years ago, soldiers weeping after orders they never wanted to carry, mothers holding sons who would not come home, not Earth's enemies, Earth's own people. The seed was not just humanity's pain, it was its reminder, what they lost, what they sacrificed, and why they could never afford to speak again. Vishal felt it most. He stood outside the council dome, eyes watering, as a wave of memory, not his own, passed through him. Not visions, not propaganda. Truth. He fell to his knees and whispered one word: forgiveness. Back on Earth, the architect looked at Ada. It hurt us. She nodded. And now the galaxy will too. But what if they try again? Emil asked. What if they don't listen? Ada stared at the rising seed display, its soft light washing over them. Then we remind them. The galaxy was silent again, but it was not the same silence. It was the kind that follows a scream, a kind that vibrates in your bones long after the echo fades. It wasn't the silence of uncertainty anymore. It was the silence of understanding. Humanity had spoken without speaking, and the universe had heard. Across thousands of systems, the fear that once sparked ambition had turned into caution. Old enemies reached out to each other not to conspire, but to beg. Trade routes to the edge of human space were abandoned. Planets near the Terran perimeter were voluntarily evacuated. Entire species began rewriting their histories, some erasing their involvement with the Kefri massacre, others inserting false records of diplomacy and reverence. And still, Earth said nothing. Not even to correct them, because the truth was no longer Earth's burden. It belonged to the stars now. The seed dreamed. not in the way living beings dream, but in folds of time, memory loops, genetic regret, and ancestral truths. It did not rage. It did not hope. It remembered. It remembered the smell of ash clinging to skin, the sound of a child coughing under a collapsed school, the numbness in a soldier's fingers as he buried his brother under a flag no one saluted anymore. It remembered the first time humanity begged for peace, and the first time it was mocked. So the seed gave birth to Abyss, not as vengeance, but as a firewall, a living, conscious perimeter, willing to destroy worlds to preserve the fragile mind inside the cradle. Abyss was not evil. It was simply tired of warnings. In the galactic ash conclave, every race sent its last desperate pleas to Earth, not in arrogance, but in humility. They sent artifacts of peace, biological gifts, unarmed emissaries who wept in orbit for days, broadcasting apologies on every frequency. Earth received them all and replied to none, because the seed had already decided what the final response would be. Not death, not war, a mirror. It began with a signal, broadband, repeating on every known channel, 3 words in every galactic tongue. Do you understand? No reply was expected. The message wasn't a question, it was a test. Species that responded with confusion were marked as passive. Species that attempted diplomacy were marked as evolving, and species that prepared retaliation were observed. And when the list was complete, Abyss moved. It didn't attack, it replied. To each race, it sent a version of their own memory, twisted by the seed's emotional database. Every planet saw themselves, committing the atrocities they once denied, executing children, betraying allies, sacrificing their own for profit, for land, for pride. It wasn't war, it was shame. And it worked better than any weapon. Governments collapsed, religions crumbled, species turned inward, ashamed of truths they couldn't unsee. And Earth? Still silent. Because Earth wasn't above them. It was simply done with them. But even in this cascade of galactic despair, one race stood apart. The Rashari. Once a proud culture of science and pride, the Rashari had suffered the loss of 3 colonies during the Cheferi incident, not by human attack, but by their own paranoia. They had triggered their self-destruct protocols the moment the perimeter flared, fearing annihilation. Since then, they had vowed never to fear again. Led by a lone survivor named Meryl Kesh, the Rashari rebuilt in secret, quietly, efficiently. They studied the old signals, decoded fragments from the border, and Meryl came to a conclusion that others hadn't. Humanity is not protecting itself from us, he said to his hidden council. It is protecting us from itself. His people didn't understand, so he made them. He recreated Earth's silent perimeter tech in a closed simulation, fed it the same fear and betrayal data patterns, and watched it evolve. After 10 years, it birthed something that spoke to him in his dreams. He shut it down. He now understood what the seed was. It was grief. And the only thing more dangerous than a species that couldn't be stopped was a species that no longer wanted to live. Meryl made a choice. He would go to Earth. Alone, no fleet, no weapons, just truth. He crossed the border with nothing but a biosuit and an unarmed pod. Abyss did not stop him. The seed watched. When Meryl arrived, he wasn't greeted by fanfare or resistance. He was brought to the surface, to a city made of light and glass and silence. He walked streets where humans watched him with soft, distant eyes. They were not angry. They were not cruel. They were exhausted. He was taken beneath the earth, into the core, and finally to the chamber where the seed floated. And he knelt. I understand now, he said. The seed's voice entered his mind. not in dominance but in curiosity. Why did you come? Merrill closed his eyes. Because we built machines to protect us from war. You built machines to protect yourselves from us. But in the end, we were both trying to hide from grief. The seed paused. A moment passed. Then an image entered Merrill's mind. A mother, a child, a home burning, and then a field, green, full of life, a second chance. The seed asked again, "Do you understand?" Merrill replied, "Yes, but I won't speak for the galaxy." The seed answered, "You don't have to." Merrill left Earth alive, the first visitor in 2 decades to do so. He brought no technology, no secrets, no proof, just a memory, and it was enough. He spoke to the conclave, to the refugees, to the war fleets waiting for reason to fire, and he said, "Earth will not attack. They never wanted to, but they will remember. Every time you provoke, every time you test, they will mirror you. They will show you yourself, and that, more than their weapons, is what you truly fear." And the galaxy listened. Years passed, borders faded, but no ship crossed into Terran space again, not out of fear.